So, once again, hello everybody. It's Friday, it's the Buddha Center, it's the temple. It's certainly good to see all you guys today. So let's go ahead and start out like we normally do, short period of bell meditation. Wherever you are behind your avatar, just get into a nice meditation posture. And as I ring the Ching bell here in Second Life, just focus on the sound of the bell. The idea here is to get that deep listening going today, get that concentration going so we can absorb some Dharma. You're going to get distracted, happens to all of us, and when it does, I just want you to gently remind yourself to go back to listening to the sound of the bell. Short period of meditation, then I'll do the 3 recitations, and then on with the talk for today. So let me give you a moment, get into a nice meditation posture, and we'll begin at the sound of the bell. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the teacher. I go for refuge to the Dharma, the teaching. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the taught. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I have taken refuge in the Buddha. I have taken refuge in the Dharma. I have taken refuge in the Sangha. 3 pure precepts. Cease to do harm. Do only good. Do good for others. Bodhisattva vow. However innumerable all beings are, I vow to lead them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Swaha. Hopefully that cut out some of the lawnmower noise. All right. So greetings, everybody. Good to see you. So today we're going to talk about the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness, this is a word you've probably heard over and over as you've explored Buddhism or as you've been walking the path. Mindfulness, from a secular viewpoint, you've heard of mindfulness meditation. So mindfulness is kind of a buzzword these days. But of course, this idea of mindfulness kind of arose quite a long time ago, 2,600 give or take years, and probably before that. But at this moment in time that we find ourselves right now, the ability to be mindful has greater value than maybe it has in recent times. We must develop a deeper level of mindfulness of body and mind and mental constructs and feelings in order to effectively navigate the illness, the anxiety, the future, and the fear that's being caused by this coronavirus pandemic. No doubt, this is a time of suffering. No doubt, this is a time for practice. Let's say a deeper level of practice maybe than you have engaged yourself with up to now. I'm going to do a little, some verses here from the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. This comes from the Digha Nikayas. And this is a section where the Buddha speaks about the 4 foundations of mindfulness and how to cultivate the mindfulness and awareness that will allow us to be deeply present in our lives and in whatever moment that we find ourselves in. So here it is. Thus I have heard. In this way, he remains focused internally on the body in and of itself, or externally on the body in and of itself, or both internally and externally on the body in and of itself. Or he remains focused on the phenomena of origination with regard to the body, on the phenomena of passing away with regard to the body, or on the phenomenon of origination and passing away with regard to the body. Or his mindfulness that there is a body is maintained to the extent of knowledge and remembrance. And he remains independent, unsustained by, not clinging to anything in this world. Short passage, but of course, Buddhist legacy masters and teachers and scholars have expanded that for us so we have a better understanding of it. But here the Buddha is offering that by being mindful of how the body-mind, and I'm going to kind of put the two together like I normally do, body-mind as one word, the Buddha is offering that by being mindful of how the body-mind is internally and how our experiences externally will affect it, by being mindful that the causal process of the universe will result in arising and passing away, and by being mindful that through our knowledge and practice we can develop mindfulness to the extent that we can avoid the cravings and the clinging that leads to suffering. So, what are these 4 foundations? Let's just say here, when he's talking about 4 foundations, he's saying these are the practices. These are the actions that we have to take to develop mindfulness. He's not saying this is the foundation that's already there. This is the foundation that we each have to build. If we want to come in out of the metaphorical rain, we've got to build this thing. So we start out with mindfulness of body. That's the first. And it starts out with mindfulness of breathing. Now, again, something you've heard of a lot in Buddhism as you explored and practiced. Like I said before, you've heard, breathe in, breathe out, watch your breath, breathing meditations. Breath is important in more ways than one. But whether we are engaged in, say, a watching the breath meditation, or maybe a dynamic breathing meditation practice, The intent of these type of practices are to develop mindfulness of breathing. The act of breathing, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, connects us firmly to this life. Right? We start breathing at birth, we stop breathing at death. So it's pretty important. And it can serve as a barometer of how things are with us in any given moment. And also with others, right, if we're aware. But the more mindful we become of our breathing, the more mindful we become of all aspects of this life. And also, the more mindful we become of the breathing of others, right, the more aware that we become of that, this can also help us out in many aspects of life, because we can kind of see where people are coming from. So it can serve as a barometer of how things are in a given moment. Breathing hard? Well, anxious maybe about that coronavirus test swab that they're about to insert way back in your nostril. Breathing out a long sigh? Like, the test was negative. Not breathing at all? I think that one's pretty obvious. So breath is important. We have it when we're born, we lose it when we die, we have it all the way in between, and it's always there for us. But we have to be mindful of it. And because it's in so many ways an autonomic function of the body, sometimes we get complacent about our breathing. And I can tell you from my experience, you'll get complacent about your breathing until some medical condition happens and your breathing isn't as good anymore. Then you're going to be much more mindful. Don't wait. Be mindful now. So the second mindfulness of body is postures of the body. 4 basic postures: walking, standing, sitting, and laying down. It is part of practice to develop and maintain awareness of the positions of the body so that we don't become complacent with how we are. Now, if you're just talking about walking, standing, sitting, and lying, well, we can become complacent about those because it's just normal things that we do every day. But beyond those 4 postures are the kind of mechanics that our bodies go through in a typical day that we need to be mindful of. There are postures that indicate how we are in any given moment, right? What is our mood? How are we feeling? What are we enduring? What are we enjoying, right? Our bodies can tell us that. Slumped shoulders, for example, it could be just bad posture, but it could also be an indication of depression or maybe muscle weakness. A stiff and erect back, well, that could just be a carryover from a life in the military, or it could be an indication of high levels of anxiety. A relaxed walking pace, that can be an indication of contentment or patience. But a really fast, forceful walking pace, that could be an indication of anger or being in a hurry. So postures of the body, it's very important that we're mindful of those for many different reasons. Right? Not only because they tell us about ourselves, but they can also help us understand and connect better with others. I think about a particular posture of the body on our American president here, Trump. Whenever he is with a big group of people and he's sitting down, it seems he always got his arms crossed and hugged in real tight to his chest. Well, that's a posture of the body that speaks volumes, just like a relaxed posture would. So again, we need to be mindful of those. Then there's clear comprehension. This is kind of a combination of intent, our perception, and our awareness. So within clear comprehension, there are 4 subgroups, if you will. We want clear comprehension of purpose. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? We want to be mindful of the intent of the actions that we're taking. What is our purpose? And we want to be clear about that purpose. Now, might it change? Well, sure it will, because we know about impermanence and causal conditioning and all that. But we want to know what is our purpose as we start out on something. We want to be clear about it. Then we want to be clear about situationality, meaning is the action or actions we're choosing to take appropriate and skillful in their application to whatever situation we find ourselves in. So it's all about being situational. But we want to be clear what that situation is, or as clear as we can possibly be given whatever time constraints maybe that we have. Also, to be situational like this, to be clear about it, requires development of perception without biases or desires. So basically, perception based on reality, not perception based on what we might want or what we might hope for. Then there's clear comprehension of meditation. Meditation being the body-mind exercise that it is, there must be a clear awareness in the beginning of the value of a regular meditation practice. So like if I'm showing you how to meditate, I can tell you in the beginning and give you a clear comprehension of the kind of, say, health benefits that you might get from, or that you can get from meditation. And I can tell you, and you can listen, and you can comprehend, but you won't get that clear comprehension until you actually experience it. That's why these are action things, right? These are things we have to do. So, clear awareness of the value of a regular meditation practice, but there must be an equally clear awareness of the value of what a meditation practice cannot do. Because there are people that think that a meditation practice can cure ills, it can cure mental illnesses. Now, can it help with these things? Most probably. At least can help with how we interact with them and how we process them. But we want to be clear what meditation can do and what meditation cannot do. Because we don't want to lead you down a path where you're expecting something that will never happen. And then there's clear comprehension of reality. The best way that we can get a clear comprehension of the reality around us is through the three characteristics of existence: impermanence, suffering, and the not-self. These three characteristics point directly to reality. The reality of impermanence, right? Nothing is forever, basically. Suffering. All human beings suffer at one point in their life. The suffering might come from pain. It could equally come from joy. And then not-self. It's a reality that you change all the time. That you are a self, but it's a self that's going through transformations in every moment. So those are three things that are reality, and they are realities that we can experientially verify in our moment-to-moment living. When you have a sink of dirty dishes, those are dirty dishes, but they're impermanent, right? Because you're going to wash them and they become clean dishes. Then there's reflection on the reality of the body-mind, which I kind of hit there. They have two different reflections here that I find interesting because they seem to also go into the one that I just spoke of. But here the reflection on the reality of the body-mind is to realize that the body-mind is a collection of impermanent parts, which has kind of already been covered in impermanence. Impermanent parts meaning, number one, we have cells that are dying and being reconstituted, or however they do it, all the time, right? So we're always changing. We always are filled with impermanent parts. Baby teeth that fall out, old teeth that fall out. Then there's reflection on the material elements. And again, we're still in the body. Happy Friday, Jake. Good to see you. So you want to realize that the body-mind is part of the causal process of the universe, along with all other things. Just want to always keep in mind that what you do matters. That you are part of this causal process of the universe, and you can't escape from it. Your thoughts, your actions have impact. Period. So that was mindfulness of body. Now we'll do contemplation of feelings, or mindfulness of feelings, if you will. We need to start out with a disclaimer, if you will. Feelings are not the same as the more complex mental functions that we call emotions. Feelings and emotions. We kind of use them as a synonym often, but they're really not the same thing. Feelings manifest as the result of an action or an experience. Touch a hot stove, ow. Take a 10-mile hike with a 30-pound pack on your back, exhausted. Right? These are feelings. Emotions are also the result of an action or experience, but they can also just be generated by the conscious mind, right? Just thinking about the past maybe, or fondling the future. So when we look at feelings, we're looking at pleasant, neutral, or unpleasant feelings. And I have to say, in this time of pandemic, man, you can go through all three of those in, a couple of minutes. All right, having pleasant feelings, and then suddenly your feelings get kind of neutral, and then it's unpleasant because you hear or see something that brings on that unpleasant feeling. Then you want contemplation of the body and of the mind. And then we look at worldly or unworldly feelings. Worldly, pleasant feelings in traditional practice are generated by physical phenomena. Things that make us feel good, like food, or sex, or drugs, or whatever makes you feel good. And an unpleasant one is being angry maybe at not getting our way. Those are worldly things that happen that cause us to have feelings. Unworldly is traditionally viewed as the joy and serenity that arises from a meditative practice. That's the pleasant feeling. The unpleasant feeling is when you're worried about the lack of progress in meditation practice. And that's an unpleasant feeling. In contemporary practice, from a pragmatic view, dividing feelings into worldly and unworldly can result in kind of a dualistic approach, so we want to be aware of that. But feelings just are a phenomena that we realize are impermanent and result from the causal process. So if you touch the stove and it was hot and you burned yourself, you just don't touch the stove again. Unseen pleasant feelings can lead to craving. Unrecognized unpleasant feelings lead to ill will toward others. And unrecognized neutral feelings lead to ignorance. Realizing the link between feelings and cravings is part of the process of transcending them and discovering the freedom that will empower us with. So again, pleasant, neutral, and unpleasant feelings. We want to contemplate these. We want to realize the difference. Then there's contemplation or mindfulness of the mind. Those of you that have sat with me for a while, you know this. For me, it's all about how are you, not who are you, or what are you, or when are you. I want to know, are you practicing rigorous self-honesty? This is how we contemplate the mind. We start out, we want to know how we are. We don't need to know who we are or what we are. How are we within ourselves, and how do we deal with the world around us? Contemplation of the mind also be questions like, are you practicing rigorous self-honesty? Basically, are you being honest with yourself? Because that's really the only way you're going to make progress. Are you viewing the world as it is, or how you want it to be? This is how to determine a major component of our worldview. This is how we contemplate what's going on in the mind. Or this is one way, right? This is being mindful of the mind. We do that by asking that mind questions. And then there's contemplation of mind objects. in trying to, we talk about mind objects, we're talking about the things that the conscious mind can create within our head, like reliving a vacation or imagining a vacation. Usually I use the example of an orange, because when you think about an orange and you think about the taste, the look, the smell, the sound it makes when you pop the skin open, your conscious mind can create all that to the point where you start to salivate, or you can feel like you smell orange, for example. So when we talk about contemplation of mind objects, this is kind of the idea that we're pointing to. These are the things that we can create within our mind, and we need to be mindful of those that arise. So they're like the 5 hindrances. These are dispositions that hamper progress in meditative practice where we're trying to lead ourselves to mindfulness. So there's sense desire, anger, sloth and laziness, worry and flurry, skeptical doubt. So we want to know, we want to be mindful. Are these some of the ways that we think? Are these some of the ways that we act? And if they are there counters to those? Are there, let's call them, is there a way to cure them, if you will? So if it's sense desire, then we do some good body-mind meditation to try to ease off that sense desire. Are we angry? Then we want to practice some loving kindness. Are we very slothful and lazy? Sometimes just a change of posture, or maybe a change in the lighting in the room can help. Are you in doubt or skeptical? Study the situation. Ask questions of yourself and others. So those are the antidotes to the 5 hindrances. We need to be mindful of that. If we're mindful that we're dealing within ourselves with one of those hindrances, then we need to be mindful of the paths out of those hindrances. Other mind objects, the 5 aggregates of clinging. So these are the 5 phenomena that we can view that will help us eliminate this idea of self. And so we can realize that impermanent not self. We look at things like form. Our form is always changing in one way or another. Feeling, which we talked about. We can see that feelings aren't really part of us, right? They're not of us. They are phenomena that we have to deal with. So they're not part of the self, but they're always affecting the self. Perception. Our perception changes all the time. Right? From what we learn to perceive things maybe better, maybe not. Mental formations. That's kind of the idea I was talking about of the orange, right? We can have these mental formations that can really seem real. And we can begin to cling to those mental formations, especially when they become like, let's say, a thing that you have built into a memory that never really happened. But that false memory has become something that drives what you do in your life today. Well, that's a mental formation that has a negative impact or an unwholesome impact. So as we are developing mindfulness of these aggregates within us, these are the things that we want to look at. And then there's consciousness. And this points to the idea of the not self, because consciousness too is something that we are dealing with. And it changes. The things that it creates in our head can change, and its actions within our practice can change. Then there are the 6 senses. All consciousness arises through one or the other of these doors: eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body, or touch. This is all the senses that send the signals to the body, or to the body mind. But then we've got consciousness, that 6th one, Buddhism likes to throw in there as a sense. And again, because it can create the other senses. Now, are they false creations? Yeah. But the consciousness can create them in such a way that we can feel that they were real. So you might think you saw something. Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. There are the 7 factors of moments of enlightenment. Investigation of the Dharma. And really that applies to all knowledge, not just what we would consider the Buddhist Dharma. Energy, joy, mindfulness, tranquility and calm, concentration and effort, equanimity and balance. The practice of all of these, and you notice mindfulness is right in there, this is what can bring us to having moments of enlightenment. Bringing our focus to the first 3 can aid us when our body-mind is dull and bored. The final 3 can help us achieve and maintain balance during times of stress. And we certainly are within those times now. So engaging the 4 foundations of mindfulness, engaging the various levels of practices that are within the 4 foundations will take effort and commitment. Let me rephrase it. It does take effort and commitment. The key when contemplating them is to recall that the Buddha realized and taught that learning is gradual. And one of the first things to be aware of is the organic and interconnected aspect of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Because it's all happening within our body mind. And like the Eightfold Path or the three pure precepts and other guides for Buddhist philosophy, one aspect of practice is connected to the others. A couple of examples. When focusing on mindfulness of breathing, the body-mind will naturally lead to an alleviation of worry and anxiety, which is one of the 5 hindrances. When contemplating the mind, for example, we're going to uncover feelings of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, and the effects they are having on how we are. So the 4 foundations of mindfulness, if we look at it within the pandemic that we're dealing with right now, and we start with number 1, we say mindfulness of body. What are we watching for? When we're thinking mindfulness of body right now, we're thinking dry cough, fever, weakness. All these things we're being told can be symptoms of the coronavirus. Our breathing, the posture of our body, how clearly we're comprehending what's going on. We're reflection here on the reality of what is really going on with our body minds in the midst of this. Are we fearful? Are we content? Are we anxious? Reflection on the material elements. When I think about this, I think simply about wearing a mask. We have to realize that our body, or our body-mind, is part of the causal process of the universe. So we wear a mask so we don't infect others if we have the virus and we don't know it. That's the reason we do it. Now, does it protect us too to some extent? Yes. But reflection on material elements, that's what a mask is. It's a material element of what we're dealing with today. So we contemplate our feelings. We contemplate our feelings as this is going on. Again, fearful, discontented, joyful. Because there are some people that have found joy because they're spending more time around their families, for example. So, as you go through this pandemic, you're going to have moments of feeling pleasant, and moments of feeling unpleasant, and moments of feeling neutral. We want to be mindful of those and look into why is it making me feel that way? Why are these feelings arising? Contemplation of the mind. I have heard that during this pandemic and being in quarantine or lockdown, whatever you want to call it, a lot of people are saying, man, I'm bored. I am so bored. I have nothing to do. This is, for us, perfect opportunity to do some contemplation of the mind. Perfect opportunity to sit down on a cushion or maybe in a nice chair and meditate or think about what's been going on. Contemplate how we feel, what we think our next steps might be. And then contemplation of mind objects. Emotions are running really high right now for most everybody. And the 5 hindrances are cropping up for everybody, Buddhist or not. I mean, think about it. Sense desire. I think the biggest sense desire for so many people is, I just want to go back and be social, right? Physically social with people. As somebody told me yesterday, all I really want is a hug. I had a nice physical hug from somebody. There's anger over this. There are people that are finding themselves to the point of being just slothful and lazy because, again, they're bored. They don't think they have anything to do. Of course, there's worry. And of course, there's doubt. These are the major mind objects I think that we're dealing with right now. And is it easy? No. But as we come together here at the Buddha Center, whether you're coming to listen to me or you're listening and talking to others, you're developing the practice and the skills that can help you and others get through this time of pandemic in at least a less fearful way, a less angry way. Work on your mindfulness during this period of time. Because by being mindful, you will see the positive and you will see the negative. But I want you to look for that positive first. We've got plenty of negative. We've got plenty of unwholesome drifting around right now. All we got to do is look at the news, read the news, sometimes talk to friends and family to know that things are pretty rough right now. But we'll get through it because everything arises and falls away, and so will this. So be mindful of how you are. Be rigorously self-honest. And don't just look for the negative. Look for the positive out of this too. And while this doesn't have a lot to do with the 4 foundations of mindfulness, I would just like to add this. I hear a lot of talk about the new normal. That after this, there's going to be the new normal. And there certainly will be a lot of things that will become the new normal. But what I don't want to see become the new normal for you or me or anybody else is the fear and the anxiety and the doubt and the skepticism that is so rampant right now. Let's work, all of us, hard and be the example for others so that those things don't become the new normal. We don't want to be fearful of coming together again. We don't want to continue to be angry at, say, our governments for the way they're acting. So we don't want these negative things to become the new normal. Would it be nice if the new normal was people are more willing and ready and able to help each other? That would be a great new normal. To show more loving kindness to others, that would be a great new normal. Those things will only become a new normal if we begin by setting the examples. And we can do it.